Okay, we're going to call this first meeting of the Sustainability and Resiliency Committee to order. I want initially to just really say how exciting this is going to be to put our heads together to shape Fargo and our region's futures with the ways we're going to be able to have impacts. So I want you to know that there are no bad ideas. There aren't limits in our brain capacities and our thinking. If you have something to share, this is expected of each of you, that you will give it your best, you will think out of the box, you will ask questions, you won't sit and necessarily just try fit in, but will try direct us in a way that we're contributing to. And what a group we have here to work with, and what a skill set we have, and what a reach we have into the region, into the schools, into the parks, throughout the city and throughout the region. So this is just really going to be fun. And let's remind ourselves to keep it fun, and especially once we have some successes and some movement. So on that note, I'm John Strand. I'm the chair of this committee, and we'll just run around the table and introduce yourselves. And while you're introducing yourselves, just give us a little sense of who you are and why you're here. We'll start with Mayor Mahoney.
Oh, this is really exciting to see that we're finally working on this as a committee, as part of the city. We have always had a great relationship with the schools, and the park board work cooperatively in a variety of ways in which we feel that we have been doing things that are good for the environment, working together, trying to do things that are thoughtful, saving taxpayer money at times, and doing different things that we find to make us sustainable going into the future. But one of the dreams of the city of Fargo is, how do we make a resilient community as well as sustainable community going into the future? And we want to lead from the front, not lead from behind. So this is a great committee for us to come together on, and what are the things we can do and continue to look long-term to make Fargo a sustainable city that can withstand the different things that will come forth. And I think of Texas, when they just had the blizzard down there and how it crippled their infrastructure. And what are we doing to make sure those types of things don't happen in our community? And as we all know, 40 below zero is terrible to have, but how do we do to protect our people and our community getting through those things? So excited to be here and glad to see all the people coming forward. And I agree with John. Questions or different things you want to bring up, feel free to do it, because that's what this group's about.
Good afternoon. Apologies for being late. I'm not normally late, but for some reason I thought this was online. So I was looking desperately for a Zoom link. My name is Jennifer Sweatman. I'm an assistant professor at Concordia. My title is Sustainability Science. My focus is more on the environmental side of things and less on kind of infrastructure. So I'm interested in kind of green planning in terms of plantings and kind of native and natural landscapes around the city.
Hi, I'm Greta Gramig, and I'm really excited to be here with you all. I am an associate professor at NDSU. I study plants and in the context of agriculture, so I've worked a lot with concepts of sustainability within that context, within the agroecosystem context. But I was telling John and the mayor before we started, I moved here 12 years ago, right before the big flood in 2009. And I think it was very profound for me to realize how tight-knit this community is and how much everyone cares about what goes on here. And it was a very inspiring time to move here, and I've always wanted to contribute more to the city. And so that's why I decided to join this committee, and I hope to get to know you all. Thanks.
My name is Casey Steele. I'm a small business owner in Fargo. I've lived here for probably about 15 years, moved here for NDSU. Originally studied architecture with an interest in sustainable design, and then switched into the food industry. So I run a shared kitchen called Square One. So it's a incubator startup kitchen, and then I have a bakery myself. So very interested in how the business aspect of things can be involved in the sustainability and resilience of the city.
My name is Mark Williams with the City of Fargo Planning Department. I'm sitting in for Nicole Crutchfield. The planning department has their hands in a plethora of different things throughout the city. One of my main focuses is land use and the site plan approval process with the land development code and zoning. I think there's a lot of applicable options that the city has when it comes to sustainability in the future.
Good afternoon. I'm Brenda Derrick, and I'm the city engineer here in Fargo. And some of the departments I oversee that I'm excited to start working in the group on is our traffic signals and streetlights. And then we also have our stormwater and sewer and water installation under my realm. So very excited to start these conversations.
Bruce Charles, Inspections Department, City of Fargo.
We need a new mic, Bruce, or, sorry.
Thank you.
Much better.
So I've always been involved in energy and been very energy conscious myself. I've purchased many homes in my life. My wife says 20. She's moved many times, and I changed out the bulbs as soon as they came out with fluorescent, all the fluorescent, and then I changed out to LED. No matter what it cost, I did that. Always looking at ways to save energy. Now I'm involved in building codes. Energy code first came to us in 2009, and some might think that's a long time, but it's not in building code world. Code's been around since Hammurabi, and so we're just learning energy codes ourselves, and we find new things every day. Things changed in the last code cycle. Residential was required to have 50% of the bulbs in energy-saving bulbs. Now it's 90, so that's jumped a long ways. The code's come a long way in the last 2 cycles for a lot of requirements in all systems. Large users of energy are buildings, especially industrial sector, residential, and commercial. So all of those systems in buildings have requirements, and we look into those.
Good afternoon. I'm Brock Morrison with the City of Fargo Facilities Director. I've been in this position since May of 2019, and I'm looking forward to any opportunities that we can have with this committee to save energy, do the right thing. I'm involved in all the a variety of different buildings within the city, electrical, mechanical, building envelopes. So I'm looking forward to opportunities that we'll have with this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Bruce Grubb, and I'm City Administrator for the City of Fargo. I started in the fall of 1989, so you can do the math, and you can tell I've been here a long time. But the funny thing is, in 1989, we kind of launched the first phase of our recycling program in Fargo. And even though I'm an engineer by trade, and I was an engineer in the engineering office, I got attached to the recycling program. Here we are 32 years later, and I'm about to give a presentation on other things that we've done over that time period that might surprise you. I hope it does a little bit, but really happy to be here. I was an original member of former Commissioner Mike Williams' Renewable Energy and Conservation Committee, so I'm really happy. I think I'm the only member from that committee that's still here, but really happy to be here. Thank you.
My name is Paul Mathis. I'm with Cass County Electric Cooperative. I've been with the cooperative a little over 20 years. I've been working with energy and electricity for about 27, and I look forward to working with everyone here on the committee.
Blake Mikesell with Fargo Public Schools. I'm the Maintenance and Operations Director. I've been in Fargo and with Fargo Public Schools for a little over a year now, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to contribute.
Hi, Dave Leaker, Fargo Park District. My favorite administrator in all the United States asked me if I'd sit on this committee, and I thought, well, parks is about conservation, green space, and recreation, so I said, sure, Bruce, I'll do that. And I'm happy to be here. I've been with the Park District 22 years.
I'm Shelley Byron. I've been in Fargo 20 years, worked for the city 10, and I'm here to take minutes for your meetings.
Okay, and we have a couple folks that aren't here, but that one, Ben Dow's on a vacation. Pardon me?
Bruce raised his hand.
Say that again?
Raised his hand.
Oh, Bruce, go ahead.
I forgot to mention, as part of the welcome, we encourage you to use your personal automobile recycling bin. It fits right in your cup holder. And so put that there, display it proudly, and use it. So that is a personal gift for serving on the committee, and we have a combination pen marker as well. So forgot to mention that as we went around, but I don't want anybody to leave without their automobile recycling container. Thank you.
We like swag. It's always good. So it's a real treat to be here. And one thing you'll notice already is the decision makers in our community are at the table or are represented here. We don't have to go far to dig into and to drill down deeply into topics or into resources or into what our abilities are or aren't. So keep that in mind, that as we go forward, ask your tough questions, set out your highest expectations. Don't just assume that the first answer is the best and only answer. Go until we're satisfied, because that's when we're going to really get the results we need over time, is us contributing 100%. And it's just going to be a real delight. And we'll have moments where we maybe hit a wall. We'll have moments where we might have surprises. We might have some breakthroughs. We will have changing circumstances in the world around us that we need to be attuned to and bringing to the table. This is not a flash in the pan effort. It's a process going forward that will incrementally add up and contribute to, like the old saying, drop by drop makes the inundation. Every single moment we're doing this, we're setting ourselves up to be part of a change in our community that will be perhaps a legacy, big and small. So again, it's just a real delight to have you all here. And for those of you who applied, we had a bunch of applicants. And to have the three of you surfaced at the top of the group and to bring your skill sets, it was tough competition, but we really look forward to what you're going to bring to the table immensely. So thank you for that. Next, we'll turn to Bruce Grubb, Dave Leaker's favorite administrator. And we'll have Bruce give us a little background on the original members and their mission from back when, so we kind of get some context leading into a moment present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to explain this 3-ring binder that my comms team helped me think of, because as I was working on an agenda for this first meeting, recognizing the group will hit its stride at some point, but how in the first meeting do you get over some of the maybe awkwardness till we get to know each other a little bit? And so I put an agenda together, and this 3-ring binder is assembled. I'll just explain that to you. The second tab is the roster of this committee with contact information, so you'll find that useful. The third tab is a little bit on the former Renewable Energy and Conservation Committee background, who those members were. That might interest you. And then the mission of the Renewable Energy and Conservation Committee at that time. And I'll talk about that a little bit in my presentation as well. But the fourth tab is a white paper that I put together following Commissioner Strand's climate change town hall a little over a year ago. That's the basis of my presentation in just minutes. The fifth tab is a summary compilation of all of the comments that the commissioner received, public comments at the climate change town hall meeting. And then the sixth tab is the actual presentation that you'll see in just a little bit. And the idea of these 3-ring binders is you can keep bringing those to these meetings, and we'll have 3-hole punched materials. You can just keep it all together so you have an easy reference to go to. I didn't come up with that idea, but when somebody suggested that, I really loved it. So thank you once again. So we've already gone around the table and introduced ourselves. Number 2 on the agenda. Number 3, you can look at that yourself. That's very brief background on the RECC. And then the white paper is the basis of my presentation. And so whenever you're ready, Mr. Chair, and the committee is ready, I would love to go through that and hope you find it informative.
And Bruce, do you want to stay there, or do you prefer to go to podium?
I'll go to the podium. I can only use arrows to advance slides.
Okay, let's
so.
go right to the podium, and we'll go right to that white paper.
Okay
Thank
with
you.
everybody? This is there, we're good. Thank you. This is a presentation that I gave to the City Commission twice, actually. Once at an informational meeting and once at a formal City Commission meeting. At that time, asking for approval to select appointees to this committee. So this committee, as I just mentioned, is something somewhat similar to a previous committee that was formed by former Commissioner Mike Williams back in 2005. That committee was called the Renewable Energy and Conservation Committee and did have a mission. There were 8 original members on that committee, met regularly. But over time, by 2016, 4 of the 8 members had either retired or were no longer with us. So admittedly, that committee fell a little bit dormant. But thank you to Commissioner Strand. And a little nudge, this is the newly formed Sustainability and Resiliency Committee. So about a year ago, I just mentioned Commissioner Strand hosted a climate change town hall in this very chambers, and it was very well attended. At the conclusion of the meeting, like you'll find in your binder, the commissioner asked us to put together a compilation of the comments received, and so we did that. But one of the other things that came out of the meeting was the thought of maybe putting together some sort of white paper document just to kind of show what the city has done over the years, and maybe that would help the city commission kind of get a little juice and figure out where they wanted to go from here. So that's what the presentation is about today. I mean, obviously, as we all know, you can always do more, but you might be kind of surprised at some things that we've done that you may not know about. So I hope you enjoy it. I chose to arrange the white paper under categories. They include climate resiliency, renewable energy, emissions reductions, energy efficiency, and environmental stewardship. So, with respect to climate resiliency, this is one that I'm sure everybody's heard about, but the FM Diversion Project is a permanent flood protection project to essentially flood-proof our area and provide climate resiliency against flooding. You've probably all heard a whole lot about this, and what I'd like to say, though, without a whole lot of detail, is this is a really, really big project that's been years in the making. And then on the flip side, we've got another project called the Red River Valley Water Supply Project. This is essentially a project to try and drought-proof ourselves and provide climate resiliency against drought or water supply shortages. So again, this is a project that's been in the making for a long time. We're really excited about this because we're starting construction on this project in the spring. It essentially will bring water from the Missouri River to central and eastern North Dakota, and this has been worked on for a long, long time. But that's not here yet. And so in the short term, we have a drought management plan. And the original version of this plan was adopted way back in 2003. It's since been updated. But the current plan contains measures, specific measures that the city would take in the event of water supply shortages. And so this is a short-term drought resiliency measure. And so that's climate resiliency from the highest level under the category of renewable energy. We first dipped our toe into the renewable energy business back in 2001 when we began collecting methane gas from our landfill. Again, almost 20 years later, but we're still the only landfill, to my knowledge, in the state of North Dakota that collects and reuses landfill gas. So we're proud of that. And it's important because most of landfill gas is methane, which is a major greenhouse gas. And as you can see on this slide, we use the collected gas in a number of ways. We deliver a portion to a local industry that they use as an alternative to natural gas. We use a portion to actually fuel a generator and put that produced electricity on the local power grid. We use a portion to heat a large transfer station out at the landfill. And soon we'll be converting a portion of that collected gas into natural gas quality and looking to try fuel our garbage truck fleet with that fuel. Then I just mentioned a big transfer station out at the landfill, and when that was constructed back in 2007, we also included a solar array along the south roof line of the building. The electricity that's produced there is used directly at the landfill on a daily basis. At that same time, we also installed a commercial-grade wind turbine at the landfill, and similarly, that produced electricity is used directly at the landfill. And then something we're really excited about, we submitted an application to the Volkswagen Settlement Grant Program and were approved for funding to install an EV charging station, a dual charging station right here at City Hall. And that bid's been awarded, and so soon we'll start seeing that being installed in the west parking lot to City Hall. Some other items in the renewable energy area that people aren't as familiar with. In 2012, we installed a new fuel blending station out at our main fueling location, what we call Central Garage. And that allows the blending of standard gasoline and diesel fuels with either ethanol or biodiesel. And another significant effort was the reuse of treated wastewater effluent that's being used as a water supply to produce ethanol, which is a renewable fuel. That effort began in 2008, and since that time, the wastewater treatment plant has provided about 4 billion gallons of reclaimed wastewater for the production of ethanol. Another area that we don't talk about a whole lot is geothermal heating, and we've included that at several of our major facilities, specifically down at our water ground storage reservoir on 52nd Avenue South, and at two major large wastewater lift stations, numbers 60 and 61. So another renewable energy effort that reduces the need for natural gas and electricity at those facilities. We also partnered, another renewable energy effort, partnered on the Prairie Sun Community Solar Garden Project. That's next to that ground storage reservoir, 52nd Avenue South in Fargo. We partnered with Cass County Electric Cooperative to complete that project. It was completed in 2016. And that included a solar array, 102 kilowatt solar array installed by Cass County Electric on 30,000 square feet of city-owned property. Similar to the landfill at the wastewater treatment plant, we utilize something called anaerobic digestion, and that produces biogas through that process. And biogas is about 70% methane, and so we collect that and utilize it as a renewable fuel to heat our administration buildings and heat the anaerobic digesters themselves. And we collect and utilize about 20 billion BTUs of gas each year. And then a recently completed project, the Roberts Commons parking garage that the city owns. That project involved the installation of solar arrays, battery storage, EV chargers, programmable LED lighting systems. So we're really proud of that. And that was a partnered project. It wasn't just the city of Fargo. It also involved ChargePoint, Microsoft, Xcel Energy, Kilbourne Group, Border States Electric, MBN Engineering, and ourselves. So we're really proud of that partnership. It hasn't all been success. I wanted to point out where we failed as well. Starting back in 2010, we worked very hard to pursue a community wind turbine project, but for a number of reasons, we had to abandon that idea, and those reasons were turbine availability. You couldn't just buy one, you had to buy them by the tens. And then the available pricing for power that comes off that turbine reduced as well. So it just made that project not viable for us. Let's move on to emissions reductions. One of the initiatives that the former Renewable Energy and Conservation Committee was very involved with was the introduction of hybrid bus technology to our metropolitan area transit system. And hybrid bus technology utilizes a combination of electric and diesel fuel. It obviously gets better mileage, but also produces fewer emissions than a standard diesel bus. We also introduced similar hybrid technology into a portion of our fleet vehicles. The difference is that these are hybrid SUVs that use a combination of gasoline and electric. Again, the advantage is less fuel consumption and fewer emissions. But without a doubt, with respect to emissions reductions, the biggest thing that we've done in the city of Fargo is our landfill gas collection system. And again, that's because it's preventing methane gas from being released into the atmosphere, and methane is one of the most destructive greenhouse gases that exists. In fact, on an average year, the landfill gas that's captured and destroyed is nearly 6,000 metric tons of methane. And that equates to the capture or the avoidance of nearly 24,000 metric tons of CO2 emissions. Our recycling programs also, I told you I got involved with that back in 1989, but that also aids in emissions reductions. And based on the amount of recyclables that we collected in 2018, that was the test year, it equated to the removal of 24,000 metric tons of CO2 emissions. So really proud of that. If you combine just those two efforts, landfill gas capture and recycling, we've been able to avoid the equivalent of 170 plus thousand metric tons of CO2. And then one of the other things also kind of proud of, took advantage of the VW settlement grant, is a new low emissions fire truck that Brock, I think we may be in the process of taking delivery on. I believe it's been ordered. But anyway, this also is took advantage of the VW grant that provided a 50% cost funding for that. In terms of energy efficiency, the recently constructed City Hall here has many energy efficient features. I won't read through all of those, but they're on the screen and in your binder. Excuse me. The main library, in fact, we just awarded bids last night for an LED lighting conversion at not just the main library, but the Carlson Library as well. And then our central garage facility, our main fueling facility, back in 2010, we received a North Dakota Energy Efficiency Grant, and we upgraded that facility to LED lighting over 10 years ago. This is the one that really got me. It's our traffic signal conversion to LED, and you can see the numbers on the screen there, but I was just fascinated. We're all familiar with the red, yellow, green traffic light. Well, when we switched out the red lights, we went from 150 watt incandescent to a 7 watt LED. The yellow lights, 116 watt to 11 watt LED. And green, you can see it there, but just incredible reductions in energy requirements. And it wasn't just traffic lights. Traffic lights are complete, but we're also in the process of switching out our street lights from high pressure sodium to LED, and long story short, we're realizing a 50% energy reduction just through switching to LED on our street lights. And then we recently completed an expansion to our water treatment plant. That design included many energy efficient features, and there they are for you to look at. But what I wanted to call your attention to at the bottom is something called SCADA that we use. That stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. So on a real-time, ongoing basis, we're able to track energy uses and trends so that we can see where we might be able to gain efficiencies. Very similarly, at our wastewater treatment plant, we're under construction as we speak. Very similar energy efficient design features included in that project. And again, at the bottom of this screen, the utilization of SCADA really helps you try and keep your energy consumption to a minimum. And then, an old engineer at heart, this is the kind of stuff I love. We've started utilizing something called variable frequency drives on the pumps in all of our wastewater and stormwater lift stations, treatment plants as well. But we currently have 69 regional wastewater lift stations and 81 stormwater lift stations. And what variable frequency drives do is allow you to control the speed of motors, so it greatly reduces the energy consumption. And then with Xcel Energy and Cass County Electric Cooperative here joining us today on nearly all of our emergency generators in Fargo. We are on load shedding programs for both electricity and natural gas. So during peak demand periods, we can be removed from the Xcel and Cass County Electric distribution systems. And in exchange for that, we get a reduced commercial rate on our energy. Bruce Torelson is here, but Inspections has also formally adopted the International Energy Conservation Code, which applies to all residential and commercial buildings for energy efficiencies like, for example, insulation and other building standards. And then Brock Morrison, our facilities director, has initiated an energy load profile study. And so we're starting out with a building that's on Xcel's system and a building that's on Cass County Electric system to try to figure out what our energy use baseline is so we can look for ways to reduce our energy consumption. Stick with me, this is the final category. Under the category of environmental stewardship, again, I go back to the wastewater reuse project, and that's using treated wastewater effluent as a water supply to produce ethanol. And this is environmentally friendly because it avoids the need to tap an aquifer or river source or use fully treated drinking water. And then we also use a portion for maintenance activities like cleaning and wash down purposes at the wastewater plant. And daily we reuse nearly 2 million gallons of reclaimed wastewater. We also have a couple of rainwater collection and reuse projects as well, one at our Metro Transit garage and the other at the recently completed water treatment plant expansion. Those systems collect rainwater off roofs and use it to irrigate the grounds. So a water conservation measure. This is an interesting one. It's not a green roof, but the main library has 2 green rooflets over the east and west entrances to the library. And those were included in the construction of the library back in 2008 in an effort to have the building LEED certified. The Fargo project, the World Garden Commons at Robonus Park, was completed as part of the Fargo project, and that project took an 18-acre dry stormwater detention basin and created a combination stormwater pond and ecological community commons area. So proud of that project as well. This goes back to my early days. The landfill has been composting yard waste since the early 90s in an effort to keep compostable organics out of the landfill. The finished and screened compost materials become very popular with residents and businesses in Fargo, so a very popular program. But we also tried something most people aren't aware of, a food waste composting project back in the late 90s, and we partnered with Microsoft to do that. They provided us with biodegradable paper products and utensils from its food service, and they were interested in having those materials composted rather than being landfilled. Unfortunately, the rate of decomposition on those biodegradable food products was far different than grass and leaves, and so it wasn't for a lack of effort, but it wasn't suitable for our yard waste composting project. We also have a household hazardous waste facility, and this gets used quite extensively. This is an effort to keep hazardous materials and electronics out of the landfill. We also have a curbside recycling program for residential single-family dwellings. We also have a drop site recycling program, and that's for multifamily residences and businesses. And then we also have seasonally some special recycling programs for things like phone books and Christmas tree lights and those types of things. Our wastewater treatment plant also operates a sump pump program, and this is an effort to keep sump pump discharge out of the sanitary sewer in the storm sewer where it belongs. And this limits the amount of sanitary sewage that needs to be treated at the wastewater treatment plant, so it results in saving energy. And then our planning department also manages an energy efficiency and conservation block grant program to promote energy efficiency and conservation. And some examples of funding through that program: the Go 2030 Comprehensive Plan, various building energy upgrades, and most recently, the picture that you see on this screen helped us purchase an asphalt recycler for Public Works. The Go 2030 Comprehensive Plan that I just mentioned, funded through that planning program, is a visioning document that promotes, among other things, principles of energy conservation, including strategies to promote walkability, infill, and density. And then more recently, in 2019, a strategic plan for downtown was adopted titled In Focus. That plan includes multimodal transportation recommendations and principles of green infrastructure such as stormwater management. And so that is in the interest of providing greater environmental resilience. So I know that gets a little bit long. I apologize for that, but I just felt maybe that's a way to get people engaged. And we'll start out with what's Fargo been doing for the past 30 years or so. So thank you for the time, Mr. Chairman. I'll turn it back to you.
Bruce, why don't you stay at the microphone, or you can go to your chair. Who has questions or feedback or follow-up for Bruce on any of these topics? Don't hesitate. You know, one of the things go ahead, Bruce.
I was just wondering, I've seen cities with recycling programs in commercial, industrial, and we haven't done that yet. Has it been looked into, do you know?
Yes, it has. And we do a certain amount of that, but what's interesting about commercial and industrial waste collection is The private sector does a lot of that. When it comes to residential garbage collection, the city is the only provider, so it's a little bit easier to incorporate recycling into the waste collection strategy. But we're one of a number of commercial and industrial waste haulers, and so we're constantly working with the private sector to try to get there. Still on the list.
What I've noticed is that both my mother and my mother-in-law, they both want to recycle, but they say they can't. And it's because of the system that's in place, not the city system, but the private owner system. She puts recycling into a box, but then she's 90 years old. She's not going to get to a recycling facility. We could go there and do it, but it's difficult, she says, so she doesn't. And there's a lot of people in those facilities, so I think about that.
Yeah, and we've, since we've gone to an automated form of collection, we also have the ability to do that on the commercial side now as well. So we're starting to try and incorporate those. It really is the apartment buildings that are the biggest challenge. And so we're trying through technology to be able to make that available.
So Bruce, that brings to my mind, a lot of times we attend seminars or workshops and we have whiteboards around us and we've put Post-it notes around. So when you drop an idea or throw a topic out there, let's think of Post-it notes where we sometimes might alert ourselves to topics to look into or to follow up on, and just as setting a bench, or not a benchmark, but a placeholder so that we have those discussions going forward. Who else? Let's continue on with this dialogue about what Fargo's been doing, and any thoughts or insight or comments or questions?
Yeah, I have a question about the landfill and the gas collection. Do you know what percentage of the total emissions are captured?
We try capture it all. We know we can't do that, and we do go through periods of maintenance and those types of things. So I don't know what a good rule of thumb might be for the percentage that is captured, but more is captured than escapes. Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I was just going to ask the committee, in the presentation, did anybody see something they weren't aware of? Show of hands. We've got some folks that have seen this 3 times, so that's not fair for them. So,
anybody else?
Mr. Chairman?
Certainly.
I'm just curious, in the school system, you have big buildings and have a old, new, a variety of different things. Do you have, like we have Blake that does kind of facilities, looks at our facilities and see what we can do better? Does the system, do you have a system where you guys are looking at what can we do better on energy efficiency?
Sure. One of the pushes that we've been looking at this year is what can we do better? What efficiencies can we bring in? And when we're doing building now, new construction, what are we doing in those buildings as well? I think you're going to see more of a push from our end to not necessarily to be LEED certified or look at net zero, but get pretty close to that and look at those initiatives that are there as well. There's a lot of things that I'm seeing in this presentation right now that we're interested in as well on our end with the schools. So I'm hoping to include a lot of that. I know that the people that I work with on my team are definitely interested in doing those things as well. The further recycling, further efficiencies with windows, further efficiencies with LEDs, all those things. So yeah, we're looking at all that.
And then Brock, Bruce showed us what we gain on traffic lights, but I know you're redoing the library. Is there some energy savings, or what do we gain by doing LEDs in all the library areas? Is there a significant, just like we asked here, did we gain something there?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll just use the main library as an example. So with that, everything in there was fluorescent lights. With the conversion to LED, and this was through the contractor that they did an energy analysis, and it was a payback in about 3 years. Your energy costs go down. The other thing with the lighting is it's just a better light, less maintenance, and overall it's a better quality. But yeah, every building that we've done this on, we'll have an energy analysis, and they'll go through and give you a payback and how long it takes. So yeah, absolutely, there's a payback.
Blake, I'm just curious, the school district some years back embarked upon a long-range facilities plan. Could you tell us how that's going and how you keep it contemporary? And is that still your roadmap for the school system?
It's a roadmap, but I think with a 10-year plan, it's very hard to stick with a 10-year plan, considering this year maybe a roof needs to get replaced that we didn't know was going to go bad. Something might happen with a boiler at a school, so things get put behind. We're about 2 years to 2.5 years behind on our 10-year plan, so we're looking at what makes more sense to be able to address those issues, especially the higher ticket issues, boilers, roofs, window replacements, those kind of things. So we're looking at possibly taking that down to a 3 to 5 year plan instead of a 10-year plan, just because we don't want to get behind on those things. We'd rather address them now. So we're partnering, we're looking at 2 different companies right now to partner with to address that as far as bringing that 10-year plan down. It's just, I don't want to say it's unrealistic, but it's very tough to stick with that plan as a roadmap. It's great to have all those things listed out as far as what we need to do, but it's very hard to stick with that when things come up. So that's kind of where we're at.
Are you Jim Free's replacement?
Yes.
Okay, that explains it. That's a really good format for us to be looking at. And, you know, what I recall back then was if you don't have a roadmap and if you don't have a plan that you kind of try to adhere to, your maintenance issues, they call it deferred maintenance, but pretty soon you've got a mountain of it. And then you're really behind the curve if you're so far behind in keeping up with what you need to keep up with and move forward and it keeps lagging and growing. So those are good things to always have on our, and yet there's technologies and sciences that unfold that might be to our benefit through that time. But that's the school system. How about the park district? Do you have a maintenance plan or a facilities plan or?
Yeah, and we're going to be looking at that similar to what the school district. We're a little bit behind them, but we've actually reached out to Jim Free to help us put that type of facility plan together. And you know, we've kind of picked off the low-hanging fruits, the LED fixtures at our facilities and our parks where we have street lighting, the VFD drives on our irrigation systems and air handlers. So we've kind of picked off the ones that we're very aware of, but you know, as the school district's going to do, we're going to be kind of digging in deep on our facilities and what can we do in the next, 10 years for long-range capital planning and deferred maintenance.
Anything else on the discussion on what Fargo's been doing? Just any questions at all?
Mr. Chairman, I'm just curious, Jennifer, what the students might expect of a government to be trying to do. I know that President Biden talked about getting into electric, maybe our transit is going into electric or trying to get hybrid vehicles. What's the sense of the students? How fast should we be doing that? How fast should we be looking at alternate technologies?
That's a tough question. The students sometimes have kind of unrealistic expectations of how quickly we can kind of go about making some of the bigger scale changes. But looking at climate change in particular is one area that they're particularly passionate about. Looking at reducing our carbon footprint in general. So we have projects that kind of come across where students are interested in, at least at Concordia, trying to reduce some of those emissions. Every now and then, or every couple of years, it pops up where we are wanting to do food waste composting and things like that, which you've stated is unrealistic for some reasons, and especially for kind of a small college for Concordia. So it kind of comes and goes. Sometimes it's their focus is climate. Sometimes the focus is food waste, which then ties into climate. So they're kind of all over the place, but they want to see results fast because they kind of directly translate that into how their future is going to look.
Casey, were you going to ask a question or something? I think I looked like you were going to.
Yes, I had a question for Bruce. Has the composting project been revisited since, I forget what year you said it was originally partnered with Microsoft?
Food waste composting, are you referencing?
I know you mentioned, like sorry. Because it was the plates and the utensils. Is that what you were trying to compost with?
Yes, it was utensils and paper products, biodegradable, and it's not that that material isn't compostable. It is. It just didn't fit into our yard waste. We thought we might have an easy strike here. Let's just incorporate the two together. It didn't work for our yard waste composting because that's about a 90-day process, and the utensils, as you might imagine, it take a little bit longer. So, but it is compostable if some sort of solution could be found specific for that material. It works.
Oh, I'm interested in the food waste issue as well. That's why I asked about the emissions, because, you know, it does contribute quite a bit to the emissions to be putting organic matter into landfills. So has there ever been any discussion of trying to do residential pickup of compostable materials such as food waste? Not things that take forever to degrade, but food scraps, you know, would certainly dovetail in with the yard waste.
We haven't gotten into the collection component yet because first you have to have a place for it to go. So that's the part that we need to get our head around. But maybe out of this SRC group, maybe we can come up with some ideas on how to deal with that. But first you have to establish a destination, and then the act of collecting it, we've kind of perfected automated collection for garbage and recyclables. It would be a separate container, but the act of collecting it is probably the least of our worries.
You know, Greta, one of the things that when these topics surface, as I'm making notes about our paths forward, I think we have a lot to learn from what other people do too. So we might have questions about do we or can we do these things locally, but the other component of that is what are others doing? And how can we emulate and mirror that and learn from that and replicate it locally if we can? And what are the benefits of that? So those are great topics for us to branch into at the appropriate times and to always put on our radar. Anybody else on comments on with Bruce while we're talking about what Fargo has been doing and our significant accumulation of work effort so far? Anything else? Okay, thank you, Bruce,
Thank you for
very
the
much.
time.
That's a foundation for us from which to work. You know, the next three topics, number 7, 8, and 9, kind of all morph into one. And basically, for the moment, we're going to maybe brainstorm a little bit about how we go forward and what methods might work for us and processes to be as effective as we can and to get some results. But I have and I'll qualify this. Of everybody around this table, I'm probably the least skill-setted, qualified person for these topics. So I can really honestly be naturally curious and non-informed about science and details. So I'm really comfortable asking my questions, you know, which come out of not knowing. But almost everybody here at this table has an immense skill set and expertise from which we can draw. So part of my job is to extract that from you and to connect us to each other. And so bear with me when I ask my naive questions. But I have a question I'd like to ask, just loosely. What does sustainability or what does resiliency mean to you? I'm just curious what your thoughts are. What does that trigger? What goes on in your heads when you're on a sustainability and resiliency committee, and what do those words challenge us to do? Who'd like to just kind of chime in? Bruce?
For sustainability, I think of sustain. I think of forever. The earth, the world, lasting forever. And how do we get to that point? For resiliency, I think of flexibility, how we changing all the time, and how we keep looking at new ways of doing things.
Greta?
Well, an academic definition of resiliency, I believe, would be something like the ability to return to a stable state after a perturbation. So thinking about what happened in Texas and how we'd like to avoid that, that would be a component of resiliency, how we can withstand challenges that are coming.
And there are challenges coming. There always will be. Who else? What do those words trigger to you? You're in the business, Paul. What would you say? It's your field.
Yeah, I guess when it comes to power supply, resilient brings to mind something that can withstand shock or tremor and withstand that and still continue to provide sustainable energy, which is something that would last and something that is around for a long, long time. I think resiliency is a big word and a big it's grown a lot of attention since the Texas issue, and something that we need to focus on as we move forward making decisions about power supply and generation.
Brenda.
So I would say, when you think of like the sustainability, I'm with Bruce of how do we continue moving forward. I've been with the city for 30 years and seeing the changes we've made over those past 30 years, and the way we look at things has been really eye-opening or really, I'd say fun to watch and to see, and how we're addressing things differently. The resiliency is, how do we always stay flexible that we can be resilient to the different things that are happening around us, and make sure that we're have different manners that we're getting things so that we can keep that resiliency in my mind. And so I guess that's how I look at it.
Dave, how about from the Park District? How would that resonate with you? Or
Well, I just say, sustainability would just, how can we offer what we're offering today, a better way to do it in the future? And then resiliency, how do we adapt and overcome? A lot of our riverfront, or a lot of our property is located along the river, and how do we adapt and change and, to the different river elevations and golf courses. So, yeah, it's about overcoming and conquering the challenges that we have, so.
Jennifer.
I have the same academic definitions, but sustainability I like to think about, kind of the old adage where you want something to be left better than how you found it. So that's kind of how I think about sustainability in terms of the environment, in terms of, whatever it is. We want it to be better than how it was kind of given to us or left to us. In terms of resiliency, I think that it's a huge word that's popping up quite a bit now, and relates to being able to, exactly what Greta said, being able to kind of bounce back in the face of a disturbance of some type.
Mark Williams.
Good question. As my background always shines, I'm going to go at this with land use side of it, and I think one of the key factors is having a comprehensive sustainability and resiliency definition that is embraced by all, so it gives us the ability to be able to move forward and work with all the individuals involved in the city and the health, safety, welfare, and the land use side of creating incentives that encourage people to follow some of these standards without creating the conflict amongst the different players involved in that market.
I'm learning a lot from all of you. Bear with me. Let's go with Brock and then end up with Blake over here.
Okay, as far as sustainability goes, I would say a good example is the methane collection. That somebody at some point made that decision to do it, and we've sustained that over the years. And I think that's something that we need to maintain, things like that we don't lose sight of those, or we don't let those programs or initiatives stop. And I think that's where, the sustainability to me comes in. It also comes in with, yes, leaving it a better place than what we inherited, but basically staying the course on those things and then making improvements to those as more things come along. The other part, resiliency, I think, yes, we've got to be resilient to many different things, whether it's weather, especially in this neck of the woods, we get all sorts of weather here. Be resilient to that and plan and make good decisions. And I think that's what we can do with this committee.
Okay. Blake?
I think the first thing that when I think of sustainability, I look at and resiliency is I think of our two schools, Roosevelt and Horace Mann, two of the oldest schools in the district, but they've survived 110 years plus. And the reason for that is they had the ability to change. They could adapt to the environment. They were resilient in the fact of what they were built with foundation and structure-wise. And when it came down to adding air conditioning in those schools and everything else, they were easy to maintain and add in there. So how are we going to do that going forward to kind of keep that footprint of Horace Mann and Roosevelt in the schools that we're building forward as far as to be able to maintain that structure and foundation and resiliency to be able to adapt to the environment and adapt to what's going to happen in the future. Build it large enough so that way we can accommodate more students, build it so that it's eco-friendly, so that it's a lot easier to use and a lot more cost-effective to be able to run and manage that school. So that's just kind of where the first thing that comes to my head when I think of sustainability and resiliency.
And I'm going to guess we build buildings now with maybe a maximum 50-year life expectancy, and you're talking about 100-year-old buildings.
Yeah, I am.
That are solid as a rock, that you can work with for a long, long time. So there's some really good insight into that materially and structurally and a lot of fronts. Bruce Grubb, I don't want to leave you out of this. When you put this together, what was in your mind for what those words mean relative to our charge?
Well, I have to beg everybody's forgiveness. I'm an engineer by trade, so when I think of the word sustainability, the first thing that jumped into my mind is more along the lines of self-sufficiency or self-reliant. That's just always been what's jumped in my mind. It's a bigger term than that, and when it comes to resiliency, simplest terms, showed it on the screen. Flood protection that we've been so prone to forever and ever and ever. And then drought protection, I'm telling you, if you look at the US drought monitor today, we're in a water supply problem, or soon will be. So being able to not be subject to extremes that disrupt you, I think, is being resilient. Thank you.
And that says a lot. Mayor Mahoney?
We've already all said it, but I think the thing we fail to remember is that Fargo is a young city. And when you think about different areas that have been around forever, and I think sometimes of my engineers, when they make a bridge, is it a bridge for 100 years or 500 years? I mean, it seems sometimes you overbuild your bridges, but we still have bridges infrastructure all over the country. And so sometimes it's that, I know certain parts of our city in 20 years will be blight. We'll have to tear them down. We'll have to put some new building there. And can you begin to think of the future? And to do that, what you're talking about, John, is something that'll last a long time. School buildings, different buildings that have done that for a long time. And I love to go to big cities and see these big buildings that have been there forever. And how have they done it, and what happened? Yet at the same time, you go to California and see an earthquake wipe out those big buildings. So It's what did we design for this climate? And we are unique in this climate and with our lake bottom. I think we have different challenges than other parts of the country. So to Mark's point in the planning, what do we want going forward? We have this Lake Fargo we're thinking about, which I think is a great infrastructure idea. And can we do more of those where we save different costs, different things long-term that don't utilize energy or don't utilize certain things just because we thought ahead? And can we continue that to all our future growth?
Anybody else? Anything that we'd like to add to what you said or others said? It's a great topic, and it's one we should always be working on and asking ourselves, you know, my idea of sustainability and resiliency is prepare for the worst and anticipate the challenges coming your way so you know you got those challenges to face, you know. Another aspect of that teeter-totter is to leverage the resources you have available to you. You know, here we are in a part of the world where there's so much food, there's so much fresh air, there's so much sunlight, there's so much energy. There shouldn't be anybody without any of them when we have so much abundance around us. So how do we connect the dots and make sure not just the collective entities, but the individuals are all benefiting and reaping that harvest from the place of their birth or their location of where they live? You know, so in my head, that's part of our job is to look at the challenges and look at what we got to work with and look at the access of opportunity, staving off problems, and being brilliant and smart and getting ahead of ourselves when we can. So that's, give yourselves permission to do that. You know, it's not just energy, it's not just food, it's not just shelter, it's not any one of these, but collectively. And we're going to be at different points in time where we can affect each of them or some of them differently, but we'll create those moments if we choose to, and or you know, firm up the ones that need to be addressed. But that was a really great topic. Now, going forward on our agendas, we're going to be looking at how we go forward. Presentations, work plans, priorities, initiatives, committees, subcommittees, topics. And a phrase I use not uncommonly is a magic wand. If you had a magic wand, what would you do? You know, if you could just get rid of the barriers and get rid of the obstacles and hone in on the focus of what should be done, what can be done, what needs to be done. So as we move forward, I'm going to give each of you in your own minds a magic wand that we can contribute to discussions and policies and practices that might actually be tangible and quantifiable. And only because we gave ourselves permission to think out of the box and to decide, okay, if I wanted to do something, here's what I'd do. Then sometimes you can go back to, well, what are the barriers to get there? But we need to have a clear ability to think big and to see ahead and to know what we're aspiring for, especially in these topics about quality of life for us as a community and for all the people who make it up. So I'm curious if any of you have thoughts. We have some ideas. There's some obvious presentations we'll ask for, you know, Mikesell and Cass County Electric, and there's organizational groups in town that, and individuals and businesses that are very, very, very involved in aspects of these topics. I'm just curious what some of your ideas are as far as like getting those Post-it notes of topics and things we can kind of just put on our list of ideas, and we can keep adding to this every meeting. But what ideas do any of you have right now, just to throw it out there for Shelley and us to get it on our radar for future agendas and for processes and methods going forward? Bruce.
I have one, Mr. Chair, and I would really be happy if one of the outcomes from this committee would be trying to establish what the city of Fargo's carbon emissions baseline is. We've been dabbling in that, not very scientifically for years, but I just think, get asked that a lot. And I think this committee, we may need some help to get there, but wouldn't it be great if we could establish that in 2021 on this date, we've established a carbon emissions baseline against something that you can measure against. I would really be happy if we could do that. I don't know what the rest of the committee thinks, but.
Bruce, I'm assuming there are other cities that have done that we could look at how they did it, what they gathered. I'm guessing it'd be really a valuable baseline, foundationally, informationally. What else? Greta.
Because I come from NDSU, I'm sort of curious. I know there may be no links whatsoever, but NDSU campus is a big part of the physical space of Fargo. Do we know what they are doing in terms of these sorts of initiatives? Because one of the things that comes to mind immediately is the way they generate their power, which is probably a pretty big source of emissions. So
Is that still the coal generator power there by Menard?
I think so, yeah. So just kind of wondering, are there any conversations cross-entity like that?
That's a really, really good topic, Greta. And then there are other institutions we could perhaps add to that list. You know, we already have the schools and the parks here, but you had campuses and medical campuses, and who knows how far-reaching they could go. Microsoft campuses, but we might have a farther-reaching look at that than just NDSU. That's a great foray, and we might think about presentations from some of them down the road. I'd be curious about NDSU's use of that power plant or not now. I don't know. I think UND, they changed it, didn't they? Okay, that's stuff for us to, good topics. What else? Jennifer.
I think, hasn't NDSU signed a climate commitment to reduce carbon emissions very significantly by 2099, I think was the deadline.
I wouldn't be surprised, I don't know.
I think that's what I had heard. Concordia has recently signed it. We're still in the planning phases of reducing carbon emissions and how we're going to go about doing that. But we haven't set that year. NDSU is 2099, and we're not quite to that stage yet. But
what other topics? Paul.
Speaking of carbon, I think carbon capture might be a good project or a good topic to discuss in this committee, and in several different aspects in power generation and other areas for carbon capture.
Go ahead.
In the discussion we had over the noon hour, there was confusion about what Cass County did versus what Mikesell did, and especially on people doing wind generators or doing solar power or doing stuff like that. So maybe at least we could have clarification for the public. Here's what we do and here's what we try to do. I think you also have an inspection program where people will go in the home and help you figure out where you're energy inefficient. And John, maybe we could just have the differences of those two, because I know the Minnesota side is sometimes different than the North Dakota side in law and in programs. But maybe the public would like to know, hey, here's a program I might want to sign up that saves or conserves power. So.
Anybody else? Greta.
Just another question. I'm trying to understand more what has been done, but is there any program to help homeowners who want to do things like solar panels? It seems like such a big undertaking to do on one's own. Have you guys worked with that at all?
I can maybe address that, Chairman.
Okay.
Not necessarily a program, but as far as from Cass County Electric standpoint, we do have a program that is available to our members if they want to put wind or solar in. We have that. We have a program for them to interconnect with us as long as they follow that interconnection and safety protocol. So we do have that program available. And along with other, several energy efficient programs, we have our demand response program. Somebody had brought that up. Bruce had brought that up. We also have an extensive key account program that work with commercial accounts on lighting audits, energy audits, thermal camera inspections that we do for residential. So we can, as Mayor Mahoney mentioned, we can put together a short presentation on what Cass County Electric does for energy efficiency and conservation.
Bruce?
I think it'd be nice to know what grant programs are available. I always hear there are grant programs in the state of Minnesota, and there's none in North Dakota, so it'd be nice to know what is available.
Great information, yeah. What I like about where we're going right now, and this is where my head's at, is where's the intersection between public and private? And how do we get to both? It's not just the institutional public approach that we're focusing on, but you're taking it right down to the people, to the grassroots of the people we serve and represent and live with. And that's important that I think we keep that balance going forward, that it's not just one or the other. And the more we get down to the people, drill down to the individual, the better, I think. What other topics?
I think one we've kind of alluded to that would be nice to have a presentation on would be kind of the social aspects of sustainability, and kind of ties into your question to me earlier about what students are interested in. It includes things like eco-injustices. So if there were, someone that works in the community that deals with those topics, would be nice to hear.
Good stuff. What else? Bruce?
Just wondering if we wanted public input to this committee.
Say that again?
Just wondering if we wanted public input to this committee.
It's a great comment, and my sense is that we welcome it. I think we let the public know you're invited. Maybe we let people know that we could create a few minutes of a public comment, so that if somebody wants to come and address us, they could, or have a way to share with us. That's really important, though, that it's not just us, that it's really us and all of them, because Bruce, that's good. It's getting to where my head is going next. Is some of the directions is, how do we and who do we enroll into our approaches going forward? So it is more than us. And we don't need to decide any of this now, but I want you to all, some of the homework to do is to be thinking of, are there focus groups we should create that like, say, Greta wants to be in charge of a focus group around academics and their systems, and then we roll in a bunch of people from the community who have similar interests. And she might have a team to work with, and it's not just Greta, and it's not just us. But I'm open to us creating community engagement processes and maybe some focused task forces or targeted groups that they go at that task, if we choose to. So let's give ourselves permission to be thinking, what are those things we would like to learn about? And then give ourselves permission to invite the public to show up, to roll up their sleeves with us, to work with Greta and Jennifer's and Casey's committees, if we have them, to work with our schools and our parks and our institutions, if that fits. I like that. I think that the more we are partnering with the people. So let's put on our future agendas, Bruce and Shelley, a public comment access, and we'll start that immediately, just creating it so the public can somehow or other get engaged with us, or we can share their thinking with us. It's really, really an important thing up front. What else? I'm always wondering what other people do, and let's just keep our eyes open for what others do. Whenever we haven't had many opportunities lately to go to conferences, but for a while there, I was a few years ago, I was new to transit, and I couldn't get enough of transit smart technologies workshops. I'd come home on fire about all this stuff coming our way. So when you show a streetlight project, my question is, for us to answer also is, are we incorporating smart technology into those new neighborhood street lighting and or intersection traffic lights? That's that kind of stuff going forward with our transit systems, with our science and our technologies and all of those things. But smart technologies, we're just, gosh darn, artificial intelligence, machine learning. We're going to be a different world in just a few years. And so the more we can kind of pay attention to what's coming and questions we have that trigger focused discussions or trigger us asking questions, let us know. If you give yourselves just the opportunity, if something occurs to you, drop Bruce and I and just an email, just say a note saying, can you put this on an agenda? You know, I want to say, Jennifer, I think I met you once, didn't I? Didn't you have a bunch of Concordia students one time talking to people? Was that you years ago where they're talking to citizens, leaders? I think it was you.
Where was this at?
The old Chinese restaurant up above downtown, there was a group of Concordia students, and I thought it was you. Maybe I'm wrong. But they talked about LEED standards and things that we can do with, you know, like when we build a building in the school, maybe I might be off base on that. I am probably. But when you build a building in the city, do we follow LEED standards? What are the values of LEED standards relative to, you know, our focus, you know, things like that? About 5 years ago.
Wasn't me. I've only been here 4.5.
Well, that wasn't you.
I'm
But,
thinking Layla Zakharova. She's
Par-
at Concordia, and I think
Yes,
she had a big
yes.
class on that.
So smart technologies, you know, we have other people in our community that'll have moments in time to come and share with us, like the Clay Foods Commission and pollinators. And, you know, some of these topics can intersect with our topics, especially, you know, when you know, but there'll be moments where we can look at others and learn from them. We have lots of people in the private sector, lots of people in the public sector, lots of people locally. So let's build our agendas going forward. Do you folks think having some focused work groups is on your radar as to an approach, or do we want to just kind of hone it in? And what are your thoughts on how to approach that for effectiveness?
I would say it depends on how many topics we're trying to tackle. It can be a lot more effective in smaller groups if we had, you know, just like a core, you know, like maybe there's 3 things that we see are tangible, actually accessible that we could do, and then have smaller groups focus on them. I've been on boards where we have a bazillion ideas, but it seems like we never get anything done. So I think that it depends on if we can narrow down the scope of our work that we're trying to accomplish here.
It's a really good point, because we could spin forever. I learned that in my life. Sometimes focus in and do something rather than just spin. That's a really, really sage advice. Other things for us to consider today as we go into setting up our next agendas. Is once a month okay for everybody right now? I think you're good until fall, or there was a point where but we'll look at that. Does this time generally work for everybody? Okay. What am I missing? Bruce?
Mr. Chair, I had a suggestion. I mean, this is meeting 1, and everybody will leave, and thoughts will enter your mind about things. As we're preparing the agenda for the next meeting, what we sometimes do with committees in City Hall is we send out in advance, do you have any topics that you'd like for the agenda? I'd really like to do that, because 2 weeks from now, something might occur to you. It would really help Shelley and I try put an agenda together, and we're not wasting anybody's time. We give you an opportunity a couple weeks before each meeting do you have anything you'd like to see on the agenda? Would everybody be okay with that?
Welcome it. Yeah. The more we're reflecting your thinking than ourselves, the more we're really benefiting from what you bring to the table. Any last notes for today? Mayor, anything? Anybody else at all? It's going to be fun to learn, and it's going to be fun to see what we can accomplish, but in the meantime, the learning is the baseline to start with, and then we'll pick a project or we'll pick something to do, and be nimble. One of the benefits of us being in this small rural part in the world is we can take a quick corner if we need to. You know, we're not as slow moving as a big behemoth, multi-million person city. We could wake up tomorrow and make some decisions to change our futures, and it will take that at times to be nimble and to be able to take a gamble on a moment's notice. But on the other hand, we're in for the long haul too. So I can't thank you all enough for being here. We have two members. Ben Dow will be joining us, and I think we have somebody from Mikesell that will be joining us. And you'll get to know Nicole Crutchfield, who is the head of our planning and development. Mark is sitting in for Nicole today, but so you'll get to know Nicole Crutchfield as well. And when you have Nicole and you have Brenda and you have Bruce and you have Brock and you have the facilities people in the park districts and the schools, we really have some great resources to work for. And then you got the mayor. That's the magic wand. That's where things happen, because, you know, he does like the budget. So any final notes for today? Bruce?
Nobody forget their mobile recycling container. Thank you.
All right, we'll stand adjourned. Thanks a bunch, everyone, for showing up.